Hello everyone, this video is long overdue. I know I've said that with some of my previous videos, but this really is the case with this one. It's been a while since I've put something together and it's just been a hectic time, but thankful I've been busy in these difficult times. That aside, I've been asked by a couple of the guys out there, how do I approach painting my backgrounds for my aviation paintings? How do I get a feeling of altitude and depth? How do I approach painting my cloudscapes in the skies? So I thought, well, that's a great topic for the next video. As most of you know by now, I love working in acrylics, and I'm going to be using brushes flat number 16 and round number 8. I'm also going to be doing this video in two parts. This video focusing mainly on the background, in other words the landscape in the painting. There will be a bit of a cloudscape in the distance, just to add to the whole effect of the landscape itself in the background, but with emphasis more on painting the landscape. In the next video it's going to be the reverse. It's going to focus more on the cloudscape and cloud effects. So I really hope you guys enjoy it, find it helpful and informative. Okay, let's get started. As mentioned in my previous videos, acrylic is a fast drying paint, so you need to keep your canvas wet, keep your paints wet, keep your palette wet. It's very important, so keep that spray bottle of water close by and spray your paints every 5 to 10 minutes. This is going to make the use and the application of the paint so much easier. And keep your canvas wet, especially in the early stages of the painting. You would have noticed me spraying the canvas, especially the top part of the canvas, which I'm going to be applying the paint to first. And you would have also noticed that I mixed sort of a wash of white. It's about 50% water, maybe not quite that ratio, but a fairly thinned white. And I applied that to the top part of the painting. The reason I've done that is because the clouds are going to come in later in that area. And this works in a way almost like an undercoat. It keeps the canvas wetter for longer, far wetter than just applying water. Now this is not always necessary. If I was simply going for a clear blue sky, I wouldn't really have bothered with this. But because I'm going to create a soft cloud effect later, I want to keep that area of the painting wet for as long as possible. And this technique of adding a white wash before I use the colors definitely helps. The sky is in for now, so that's great. Most of it's going to be covered by a cloudscape later, so that's okay. I'm going to get going on putting in a subtle horizon, and as I move down the canvas, working from the top to the bottom, I'm going to use darker colors and also stronger colors, starting with the blues and purples that one often sees on your horizons. Anything that's further away in landscape, we know, has got that bluish, beautiful blue, purples, sometimes turquoise, that deep beautiful blue, and then fading down into a deeper blue, turning towards a purple, and then further down from the purple, bringing in some warmer tones like earthy browns, moving further down the landscape into the hints of greens and the landscape which is closer to the viewer's eye. Just a quick note on the canvas, I've glued a piece of canvas down into a piece of hardboard. I've used one section of the hardboard as a palette, as you can see, and I've given the whole thing a layer of primer, a thicker layer of primer over the canvas obviously. And I obviously wanted to share with you guys how I go about mixing my paint. So it's all very basic, but at least you can see what's going on. And then regarding the colors I've got there, I generally don't use a lot of colors on my palette. So that's pretty much it. I may add one or two others, possibly a purple, possibly a green at times, depending on what I'm painting. So that pretty much represents the palette that I use every day. I haven't limited my palette simply for the case of the demonstration. That's me. I keep it quite simple. Now back to the painting. I'm mixing a lovely deep strong olive drab there, or maybe not olive drab but a nice olive green, and I'm going to use that from the bottom of the painting working up towards the top of the canvas to suggest greenery, vegetation, the plantations maybe, and just sort of a textured landscape as one would maybe typically see in parts of pretty much anywhere, parts of Europe, maybe even the UK. And I'm going to vary the colour a bit here and there as I go along. But because my paints are still wet, as I work from the bottom now back up towards the top of the painting, I'm going to blend those colours in. And they'll mix with the background colours I've got there that I've put in place in the beginning. It's still wet. And I'll get that nice feeling of depth and the subtlety of colour as I move towards the top. Now when I put down my first brush stroke a couple of seconds ago, some of you may have said, wow, that looks a bit too strong, that looks a bit too intense. And that's often the case. One is sometimes when you're a beginner but scared to use strong color, to try something, you put it down on the canvas and you think, whoa, that doesn't look right. It looks far too strong or too dark, whatever the case may be. But as you work with it and you start blending it in, it all kind of makes sense. And you need to do experiments like this. This is a good exercise for those that want to paint landscapes in general, but also in aviation art. This kind of exercise of mixing different colors, experimenting with painting various layers, blending. It's fantastic the effects you can get with acrylic if your acrylic is just kept wet, kept damp. Obviously not too wet. You don't want your paint to run all over the place. Not at all. But as I've mentioned before in videos, it's very important to keep your acrylics wet. Having said that, this is merely my style and my technique in using acrylics. There are many different styles and techniques out there, which is great. But I have heard it said that acrylics are difficult to use, difficult to master, and that you cannot achieve soft effects in acrylics, which of course is absolute nonsense. By keeping your canvas wet, by having a wetter technique, one can achieve beautiful effects, and there's no limit to what you can achieve in acrylics. An important point to note at this stage of the painting is that I no longer spray the canvas with water. I did in the beginning stages, especially when I applied the whitewash, but that canvas is now saturated with water, so it's wet enough and damp enough to extend and prolong the drying time of the paint as I continue. I do, however, still spray the palette and the paints every 5 to 10 minutes. That's very important. So now I've mixed a lovely purple grey, which I'm going to use to create depth and texture towards the horizon. And you'll notice, even though I've been painting for close on 30 minutes, the horizon, the beautiful blue horizon, is still fairly wet. I'm still able to do blending because I sprayed my canvas to begin with. That canvas has absorbed the water, it's absorbed the moisture. That primer, as it were, that I added, the whitewash right in the beginning, has done its job. It's helped to keep the canvas wetter for longer, and now I'm still able to blend in various parts, or pretty much anywhere on the canvas, but especially the top half where the clouds are still going to come and where the horizon is at the moment. It's very seldom you'll ever see white clouds. That's why it's important to remember when starting your skyscape or your cloud effects in your painting to mix almost a broken white. In this case I've added a raw sienna to the white, which is a nice warmish color. It's a lovely earthy yellowy hue, and that's broken the intensity of the white. And now I've got a lovely color to start with. Obviously my canvas is still wet in that area, which makes blending and creating cloud effects a whole lot easier. Something that won't be so noticeable from this angle is the amount of pressure I apply on the brush at various times. Obviously when the paint is more solid and denser, I'm applying a lot of pressure, and there's often more paint on the brush at that time as well. But then once I've got the majority of the paint off the brush, I use a softer stroke, applying less pressure to get a softer edge and to better blend the colors. You'll notice me from time to time using my fingertips to smooth over the paint or maybe cover an imperfection, and that's great. It's good to just be involved in your canvas, touch the canvas, feel the paint, especially for a beginner. It's a good way to get rid of your inhibitions. Surprisingly, or maybe not so surprisingly, a blank canvas can be very intimidating when you're starting out for the first time. So get involved, get dirty, have fun, experience painting and creativity, and relax. I've seen it time and time again. Anyone that's got experience or talent in a certain field, the minute they relax, they're able to perform that task so much better. Now, I know that's easier said than done, to relax, especially when you want to create. You don't want to fail, you don't want to make mistakes. You're really putting yourself out there when you're creating something like this, and the pressure's on. Now, I know I've said this before, but simply put, it's only through actually doing it, getting that practice, getting the experience, spending the time, learning, making mistakes, that you eventually are going to just overcome that fear, or maybe even that intimidation for some of you beginners out there, that the blank canvas has for you. You'll find as you progress, as you practice more, the frustration may still be there. Obviously, it still is the case when you're learning, but your satisfaction, enjoyment, and success rate in your painting will increase, and the fear and anxiety and anything else maybe there will decrease, and you'll start to really, really enjoy it. But you need to actually do it. As I've often said before, with this video and as with many other videos made by other artists, the whole purpose of it is to inspire. And you can read as many books as you like and watch as many videos as you like, but until you actually do it, you're not going to learn. So that's my message to you guys out there. Those that want to try it for the first time, maybe those that tried it long ago and gave up or didn't have the time, that's a big factor. I want to inspire. Those that want to try it, those who have tried it, try it again. Get going. It's a wonderful, wonderful, sometimes frustrating, but a wonderfully satisfying pastime, occupation, and it's great. It's lovely. I know I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I'll say it in every video if I can. It's a privilege to be able to create. It's a wonderful, wonderful experience. It's not without frustration, as those of you who've tried it will know, especially when you're learning to do anything in life for that matter. And don't get discouraged. Discouragement is going to be there either way, as it is with life. You just got to look past that and just carry on in spite of that. As a wise man once said, courage is not the absence of fear, it's taking action in spite of fear. Anyway, maybe I'll stop there before I get too deep and philosophical, but I'm glad for the opportunity just to share my mindset, the way I think, the way I approach things, and it's important. Getting back to the painting, just on a side note, completely off the subject, I just want to mention and partly apologize for the glare on the painting, especially the bottom half, which is obviously not quite dry. It's a little bit wet, which is ideal. Obviously, that's what I want during the course of the filming of this video. But it is causing a bit of a glare there, you'll see. You'll obviously understand that my viewpoint wasn't perpendicular to the canvas as the camera is. So I wasn't aware of this at the time. So I just wanted to mention this and apologize for that. At the beginning of the video I mentioned I'm using brushes number 16 flat and number 8 round, but these also would be known as a 3/4 inch, which is the 16 flat, and roughly a 1/4 inch for the round. They're both watercolor brushes. They're probably not technically used or meant to be used for acrylic, but they're so beautiful, they're so ideal for this kind of technique, a fairly diluted wet technique with acrylic. It's far softer and applies the paint a whole lot better than maybe your traditional oil brush with the coarser hair. These are ideal, and you get much better paint flow and coverage on the canvas with these brushes. I absolutely love them. Now you'll notice I'm using my smaller brush for the first time, the majority of the painting being done with a larger brush, and that's important for beginners out there to remember. Your initial effects in a painting, in any painting, even if it's a small canvas, I suggest be done with a larger brush to put in your colors, to set the theme of the colors you're going to use for that painting, to cover the canvas, get your initial composition done, the lights and the darks, where they're going to be. That's all done with a larger brush, as I've done and demonstrated in this painting. So using the smaller brush, I'm just doing some finishing, adding some details. Well, it's for the most part actually just suggested detail. There's nothing really going on there at all, really. A couple of shadows, a couple of dark areas, a couple of contrasts. It will just help to bring that landscape to life. Regarding the landscape itself, as most of you will probably realize, this is just something that I've thought up, something I've sucked out of my thumb. It's a typical scene I've done 1,000 times probably, but I love it. And it's really fun to do. It's a good exercise for other aviation artists out there, those that want to try aviation art, those that are new to painting, whatever the case may be, that want to try and do a landscape from the viewpoint of an aircraft or a bird's eye view, as it were. And this is a good exercise. So this is fun to do. Make it up as you go along. Something I must mention at this stage of the video, and it is a very important point, is the importance of painting a good background, a good setting for your subject, which is the case in any painting really. Every painting has a subject or a focal point, but this is specifically true and important in aviation art. You want the environment for the beautiful aircraft, the beautiful machine that you're painting. You want your environment, the background, to help to tell a story. Be an environment that does credit to your subject, not discredit. So this is very, very important. In a way, it's almost like the frame on a painting. One doesn't look at an artwork specifically to look at the frame. You're actually not always aware of it, but in your periphery, you're aware that it either does credit or discredit to the subject that it's framing. So this is very, very important. For example, you can have a very well painted background and then do a rather sketchy, maybe even a spontaneous, loosely styled aviation subject or painting of an aircraft that maybe only took you an hour to do, and it'll still look pretty good because the background's good. But the reverse does not apply. If you've got a beautifully painted subject, a beautifully painted Spitfire in a shoddy background, it's going to do discredit to your subject. I remember back in about 1995, 96, somewhere around there, when I started my aviation art career. I was a landscape artist at the time, but aviation was my passion. That's the direction I wanted to go in, and even then I realized the importance of having a good background for my aviation subject. So what I would do in those early days, I'd take 5 canvases, each one painted in a different background, different setting, maybe a different location or altitude, different skyscape, and I'd choose the best of those 5, choose one out of those 5 as my background for my aviation subject. That's how strict I was with myself, because I realized the importance of this fact, that the background makes or breaks the painting. Having said that, there are still days when I don't get it right either. Things don't go according to plan. Maybe something's just, the vibe's not quite right. Maybe it's a bit dull, a bit lifeless. And then sometimes you just got to stand back, take a break for a couple of minutes, maybe an hour, come back with a fresh eye, and you've got a better idea of how to continue. And even sometimes what is very helpful is to look at the work of other artists. I love the work of Michael Turner and Roy Huxley. They've been a huge inspiration and very influential in my career, and those guys have really helped me out of a tough spot from time to time. Now for a last few finishing highlights and touches. This background painting has taken around an hour and 10 minutes to complete from start to finish. I've edited it down to around 45 minutes, but all the good stuff is here. You've seen how I've approached it, the beginning stages, the way I work with acrylics, different layers and so forth. And I hope it's been helpful and informative especially to the beginners out there. But to everyone really, we all need to be inspired. It's good to see how other artists work, myself included. I love watching how other artists work, their techniques, their approach to working, whatever medium it may be. It's inspiring. There's always something to learn, and that's very important. Now I couldn't leave this lovely background just as it is. It is begging for a lovely aviation subject. So what's it going to be? Well, I was telling a good friend and client of mine that way back in about 1985, when I was about 10 years old, I built a kit, a 72nd scale Auster AOP6, and I just loved it as a kid. And that kind of stayed with me. I built one a couple of years back again, and I thought, well, I want to do something different. I love Hurricanes and Spitfires and the other warbirds, but how about something else? I love military subjects, so why not go with the Auster AOP6, which is what I decided to do. Now the next video will feature the painting of the Auster from start to finish, starting at the sketching stage going right through to the completed painting. I think I will title the next video simply as Painting the Auster AOP6. As part 2 of this video that I'm busy with now will actually feature a continued theme of painting background landscapes with emphasis on painting skies, clouds and cloud effects. But that's going to be a while still. However, the video of the Auster is just about done. Although having said that, it's still going to be a couple of weeks until I get a chance to finish all the editing and audio and so forth. But look out for that. I'm sure you guys will enjoy it. I had fun painting something slightly different, a different flying angle as well, and one of my old-time favorites, which has often been overshadowed by aircraft like the Piper Cub and others. But this little aircraft has played a role as an army observation aircraft for many years and deserves to be remembered. Thanks very much for watching. I end this video with the image of the completed painting. And if you like what you see and have enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Until next time.